one of the projects that I'm involved has to do with AI.
The collective narrative right now is that we have created artificial technology that could steer a narrative in a certain direction. And part of that certain direction might mean a loss of the aspect of humanity as we know it.
Things can be seen, there's a risk, there's an opportunity. I view it more as an opportunity. We identify the co-creational aspect between human tech and machine tech in a way. It's an opportunity for us humans to get to dwell even deeper into the essence of what it is to be a human.
Visa Viren, what I want to talk about is the way that you perceive the nature of the oneness, the wholeness. This is so important, and yet it's so difficult for people to grasp. It absolutely is captured in your expression of holokinetics. Holokinetics, you define it as the movement of the whole. Now, anybody that's watching this conversation that is a regular subscriber of mine will know that invariably we're talking about this from the spiritual perspective. The whole, the oneness, is something that comes up a lot when people talk about the spiritual approach to life. How do you sort of sit with all of that stuff, and how do you relate that oneness to our day-to-day existence as a separate entity of that oneness?
Yeah. Wow, beautiful. Thank you, Tim. That's a good and profound question to start from. I would say that the concepts such as spirituality, I can still remember myself, the persona who kind of viewed them as separate things. And nowadays it is, as the name kind of also implies, it is part of the movement of the whole, meaning that kind of the narratives and the storylines might still be present and valid, and the kind of discernment of different things happens, and at the same time there is a kind of a deeper undercurrent of basically of moving stillness that doesn't really need to be put into different boxes or put into different words or discerned in that sense. So in that way, spirituality is just as much present. It's an ever-present part of my life and the kind of the expression of life that is in this form, and it's mainly been just a notion of, okay, some of the old stories and narratives and storylines might have kind of just been fading away, so that there's kind of more spaciousness and more aliveness for whatever is just coming out, whatever is moving and whatever is forming at each moment.
One of the things that I think people struggle with is that in order for us to discuss the concept, it's a very cerebral process, right? Whereas actually what we're talking about is an experiential process, something that can only be understood, if it needs to be understood, by doing and experiencing. You do a lot of work in the corporate sector, don't you? You're a management consultant. Is that the sort of thing that your other side of your business does?
Yeah.
Maybe
not. Yeah, that's mainly the side that kind of brings in the finances and brings that part in. So definitely, and that's a beautiful kind of a play of life in that sense, that it is quite a different, or it seems to be quite a different kind of an arena to the spiritual one, for sure.
Because that's really where I was going with that, is that how do you bring your spiritual awareness that you that is such a huge part of you and your being into an arena that seems very foreign to that kind of way of being?
I would just shortly say that it's mainly presence. It's the notion that whatever arises in me, whatever arises in you, or whatever arises in the third person, interacting in whatever the arenas of life they may be, that's just one way that life presents itself. It's not good or it's not bad. It's just one way of presenting itself, and then it's mainly just the open inquiry that to which depth are we willing and able to jointly go in and dive deeper and deeper into the kind of the hollow existence of everything. Since the notion that that I seem to be living strongly is the notion that there is really no need to fix or change anything. Everything is ready as it is. Life is full and round and whole as it is. And it's more like an open inquiry that how deep can we go? How deep is the space? How deep is the shared awareness in the space that we are jointly staying in? Do we just keep it in the surface level? If so, that's perfect as it is. And if there is openness to go a bit deeper, a bit deeper, a bit deeper, then we might actually kind of end up talking about the in a way the wordless essence that you also kind of touched upon, meaning that a lot of times there is a need for our mental cognition to put some sort of a stamp around things, and then if we allow that to dissolve, it might be more of a deeper experience and something that might be at times a bit difficult to then put into words, for sure.
And also a bit difficult for the participants to be involved in, I guess. So it's a process that you might, if you were in control. I find the language difficult, but to try to grapple with your concept of the whole being. But if you were in the situation where you were able to gently nudge the circumstance into the awareness that it appeared to want to take, some of the participants in that stage of being, that depth of awareness, might find that difficult. Would you ever say that that's a route that you would take? But there's our society at the moment globally is hypersensitive about authority and sovereignty of individuality and don't put pressure on, etc. Right? That's one manifest example of the being. But you're talking about going way beyond that into the unified field where actually everything and every space, every presence is simply as it should be.
Yeah.
But this is poles apart.
Oh yeah, and that's that too. That's the paradox that however I might perceive, for instance, the external reality, the shared collective consciousness, that's that as well. And I would say that that's the transformative path that many of us in the spiritual realm especially, we seem to be journeying on, is the notion that what lies between here and there, like something that I'm experiencing and recognizing as my experience, and then there is the grass is greener on the other side, then there is that something else that we seem to be kind of moving towards. And then when the notion of that seeming separation and whatever the resistance might be on an individual or a collective level, when that is also allowed to just dance and move and play in its way, the seeming friction starts to melt away. We might still perceive that, yeah, I might prefer things to not be in the way that they are, for instance, in the collective. And at the same time, there is a deeper sense of ease of being with things being as they are.
Right. Okay. So if we just shift from the collective, human condition, if you like, our perceived experience of the collective, which actually we can never actually directly experience anyway, but let's go to the individual subjective awareness, which is really where the power of the spiritual perception takes place. It's, as we said, it's experiential, right? Now, if I understand it correctly, what you're saying is even if somebody is racked with anxiety, let's say they are suffering from what we would call post-traumatic stress disorder, and they're racked with anxiety, and that's also manifesting in physical ways. How do we equate that idea, that concept of everything is as it should be, which is fundamentally what you're saying, which is one of the classical spiritual, headlines. How do we uh, how do is the word justify? I mean, this is what do we say there?
Yeah, yeah. Well, exactly. I think you're pointing or moving towards the tricky and in a way critical aspect of how the words and the vocabulary that we use, how it creates the narratives and the perceptions that we seem to be having also on an individual level. Now, something which might sound radical to some people is the notion that it's good to, in a way, realize that is the suffering that I'm experiencing, is it mine? Or is it in a way environmental, in a way that am I suffering, or am I being anxious, for instance, because of the perceived anxiousness of a loved one, or of the planetary the things happening in the planetary level, or climate change, or this, that, and the other kind of. And what I'm pointing to is that when we actually, in a way, get to meet and just allow whatever the experience is on the individual level, on the level of a being. And what I'm also pointing to is a potential future where humanity is a collective being. So we're moving that way, but now the collective is still in the sense that we are separate individuals, and I might have the experience of anxiety and suffering myself. And the notion that whenever we get to kind of explore and just be in whatever the local experience of the existence is, there is the subtle availability of even that starting to melt away. And in that sense, the way that I view different types of ailments that are even in the physical form nowadays, I view them as just signposts and gifts. Life is telling this local physical body that, hey, there is something here, something that you might have overlooked or somehow neglected in the past, in the linear story in the past. And now it's surfaced to the extreme that it's already as a physical ailment, as a physical dis-ease. And that's kind of part of that. Okay, now it's knocking on the door. Okay, let's open the door and let's just allow that energy and that thing to come in. And that's, of course, there is a lot of resistance for us humans to fully, once again, surrender to whatever that thing is, and just kind of allow that to sweep us away. Because I would say that the identity of a being, of an individual, it is placed in all the different nooks and crannies, whether they are in a way positive or negative experiences that we have, that we still kind of hold on to. This is my anxiety, this is my suffering, this is my pain. And when I kind of allow myself to realize that, what if there is nobody here to hold on to whatever that experience is? What if it's just life's expression? There might be this type of melting away. And for instance, the physical pain might still be there, but it doesn't tell me anything more than a laughter or eating too much cake would, because it's just part of life. So the kind of the stronger attachments to this is how life should be and this is how life cannot be, because it tells something about me, and thus there's something wrong or something going on in myself. But when you kind of let go of that narrative, then there is a whole lot more spaciousness and aliveness for whatever there is to kind of come about.
Yes. Okay. So, still thinking about that from the individual subjective point of view. When you come across somebody that is in pain, now I mean, you're not you work with people differently. You work with people in a broader environment that is less encamped in suffering. I would get. I mean, different sort of suffering. Everybody suffers in some form, it seems. But at the moment, that's our human condition, right? How do you express the need for that step across? I know you kind of just did, but how do you express that need for the step across, the huge giant step, for somebody that is really not even really understanding the nature of spirituality per se?
I would say quite drastically, I don't, which means that if the space opens up,
Yeah.
if there is that natural inclination for the other being to be open and vulnerable with whatever is going on in their lives, then the conversation starts to open up, and we might even end up shedding tears together for the human condition that at times can be quite brutal. And then at the same time, if the individual is more or less shut down and cut off from these things, then there is no need to try to change that. Then it's more, I would say, an internal alchemization that, okay, I might feel some sort of dis-ease in my own being when I'm interacting with another person who might be in a bit of a tough situation in their lives, and at the same time there is no need for me to try to change that either. And then if there is that openness, if we start to exchange energy and information mostly via spoken word, then it's a different type of a dance.
It is all about the need, isn't it? It's that perception of need. If I feel the need to help somebody, then I'm putting need in the frame where it's not necessary because the situation is as it is. And therefore, if they open open the doorway to whatever, then that is when I may share what I share.
Exactly, and that's a beautiful notion. Something that we use a lot with my wife is the notion that energy speaks. So whether I or you, whether we vocally express anything, when we are sharing space with other beings, there is a continual energy exchange happening, whether we are conscious and aware of it or not. So even in a way, our auric fields are exchanging energy all the time, and that's not for me to decide in that sense to exchange the energy in that form, and in a way that, from my perspective, from my story, that also kind of takes away the need to try to change anything in others. Because if whatever happens, whatever the magic happens in when beings of a certain level of awareness come together, if the conversation opens, then it's just one way of exchanging energy, but it happens still in a way automatically, even if we don't open our mouths.
Well, very nicely put. My there's a phrase in science that, particularly in sort of more leading edge science, you know where I mean, talking about the participatory universe, the collective consciousness, but it's described as participatory, right? Now, what you're saying is that actually, even to be under, understanding to be a part of the participatory universe, the need for action is not as important from the human perspective as perhaps we think it is. Is that right? And would that go along with your thinking?
Yeah, you can phrase it, narrate it that way for sure. How I would put it in a way is that the impulse to act, it arises from the shared field, from the shared consciousness, life itself. And then if it arises here, it arises here, and then typically I narrate it the way that I would narrate it. And if it arises at your end, then you might be the one who is acting upon that said impulse, and then it's your narrative on what happened and what were the steps, either in your own personal life or in some other level of existence that in a way made that thing happen. So I would kind of phrase it that way, that us being aware of the need to take action is not that important, since the impulse and the life is still moving there, and the need for me to, I'm just saying simple example, my need to go to toilet will come whether I say so or not. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, interesting example. Yeah, okay. And as a father to be, you'll know all about that soon.
Yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned earlier on about the direction of the collective human consciousness. That we currently we communicate verbally, and we communicate very actively in the, we'll call it, three dimensions. I don't really want to get into a discussion about dimensionality, but the point being, where we seem to be heading at the moment, where the collective story, the collective narrative is right now, is that we have a really interesting input of artificial, created artificial technology that could steer a narrative in a certain direction. And part of that certain direction might mean a loss of the aspect of humanity as we know it in terms of our emotional being. How do you feel? Do you feel that you have views on this at all?
Well, yes. And in fact, one of the projects that I'm involved has to do with AI. Um, how we phrase AI is actually augmented intelligence, which means that there is that we identify the co-creational aspect between human tech and machine tech in a way. How do we kind of cultivate the essence of humanity, and then in a way allow machines and artificial intelligence to support the essence of humanity in our evolution. So that's kind of where how we view it, and in a way simplistically, we are developing artificial intelligence at the moment, and for the time being it is following the awareness of the creator, the people who are writing
Right.
the code, and kind of
Yeah.
planting the seed. So that's of course in the mix there. How I view it, like I view a lot of things in life, I view it more as an opportunity. Things can be seen there, there's a risk, there's an opportunity. Sure, I view it more as an opportunity. I would say that it's an opportunity for us humans to get to dwell even deeper into the essence of what it is to be a human. What is it that makes humans human? If there is already something that might soon to be smarter and more intelligent in the way that we think of intelligence at the moment, if there is a being that we have in a way created, okay, cool. What is the essence of being a human? And that's of course a deep and a profound question, and something that's of course discussed a lot also in this field. I view it, and how in the holokinetic narrative, how it comes about is the notion that the human collective intelligence at the moment is quite strongly tied to the brain, and the dimensionality of the mental mind, and our minds are quite strongly wired to perceive life through spoken and written words, so word formats. Now, the potentiality that I would say that kind of paradoxically also simplifies life is the notion of getting more deeply ingrained in our biology, our physical body and being, in that sense that when we kind of really get to dwell deeper into our heart space, the heart understands pictographic language a whole lot more deeper and more profound. And as there's the saying that one picture speaks more than 1,000 words, you'll get the gist
Yeah.
in there. When there is something that truly moves your heart, it is a vast and open experience. And a lot of times, if you in a way sit and dwell deeply in there might be something that comes out as instant pictographic knowledge in a way. And then the deeper we dwell in our being, there is the third brain, which is the gut. And what could be said that gut is just purely instinctual. It's just the intuitive knowing, which in a way is that movement. There is just movement in an empty space. There is just that notion that for some reason I just need to move 2 meters to the left or 2 meters to the right 3 seconds before the roof collapses. And what I'm inviting people into, which is nothing new because everything is already here, is the notion that we as humans have the ability to start kind of go deeper and deeper into this mystical knowledge that doesn't necessarily stem from the logical linear mind. And then even if we would want to go on a race or on a competition with some sort of an artificial intelligence, we have that type of computational ability in our whole bodies, in our whole spheres, that is beyond the artificial intelligence ability. Now the question is that with the vast and enormously quick pace of evolution in the AI sphere, how do we kind of perceive it as individuals and collective humanity? Do we paint ourselves into the corner and start using even more and more of the left brain hemisphere, or do we kind of allow, in a way, say that yeah, maybe we don't need to compete with the AI on that field. We can just kind of start sinking deeper and deeper into the essence of what it is to be a human.
That's what's happening, with the massive spiritual, it has to be described as a spiritual awakening that pours around the world at the moment. I mean, the awareness of humanity in its current time frame, if we say this is a timestamp of 2025, the spiritual awareness of the 7.5 billion souls on the planet right now is considerably different to what it was 100 years ago. And that is not about people wandering along to church every Sunday. It's an awareness. Now that has arrived at the same time as AI, the technology, our ability of the brain to create has increased. So we are definitely on this path. It is part of the picture collectively that we are taking part in and we're contributing to in the narrative that we tell ourselves and individually and collectively. Now, what's really fascinating to me about what you said, and I'm going to pick up on something that you're probably not expecting me to pick up on, which is your use of the word pictogram and the way that it affects the heart. Now, obviously, I'm sitting here in front of this thing here behind me, right? Now, I know exactly what that is about. But the really interesting thing to me about this is that within the electromagnetic field of the Earth, we find pictograms galore. The ancient sacred symbols are effectively heart-based pictograms. They are the code that is instructing the nature of being at this level. How do you feel about that concept of sacred symbolism, for example?
Well, just it just warms my heart to kind of share this space and this notion with you. Um, I have nothing to say in the no in the thing and what it means to me. It's that it's just the ordinary reality that I'm inhabiting, and at the same time, I would say that to everybody who is listening into this, that if you ever get bored, amazing, because there is so much stuff to be found, so much beautiful loving things to discover, unearth, and find in just the simple existence of life. And that's the whole geometric fractal reality that we are part of. And I just love the ability for us as individuals and a growing collective to kind of dwell deeper and deeper into that. Because I would say that if something needs to be rescued, if humanity needs to be rescued from itself, let's just put it that way. I'm not necessarily saying that that's the case, but if it is, the answer lies there. The answer is plain. It's not even hidden. It's in plain sight in everything that's around us, in different types of sacred, beautiful, geometrical information.
We talked about the narrative being important, and from our human perspective, we create the narrative and we live the narrative that we put into solid form from moment to moment, right? So what we know from quantum physics is that we are co-creating this environment and we are living the story that we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
Literally, we are the story and the storyteller. This is all unified field of consciousness, is that infinite field of possibility. You and I have agreed to meet and talk because we are at some level resonating within that field, and therefore there's a match that goes on there, right? Now, and people watching this will be resonating at some level within that framework. Part of my narrative, part of my story is an awareness of many billions of people that probably are nowhere near this kind of resonance. I'm not saying we're special, I'm just saying we're on this resonance. So the nature of reality isn't necessarily stuck in terms of it being molded around one lump of rock hurtling through space. It's a field of awareness. Do you feel that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And if we take it all the way to the what you could call non-local awareness, there is nobody there to discern between the awareness that me and you might be having and the what might be called the lower frequency. And in that being said, there is really no separation or no way to discern my and the other being's frequency either. So in that sense, and that notion, when it gets to dwell in an individual or in a group of people, then all the, in a way, the need to make those discernments also kind of vanishes. And therefore the whole notion of there being some sort of a separate entity or separation in that sense, that starts to fade away. Now it doesn't necessarily mean that I don't put on pants in the morning and do all the normal stuff that people do in life. That might happen as well. And still there is a deeper sense of well, and I would say that most of the people on this planet have felt this said experience, which is kind of a being part of something that is bigger than
Right.
and then it's dot dot dot, everybody feels in bigger than me, bigger than my family, bigger than my country, bigger, and then that's also tells a little bit about the kind of the vastness of your perception. That are you just staring at your own shoelaces, or are you kind of grasping on bigger things? And that's not good or bad, better or worse either. It's just seeming differences.
So, uh, huge respect for your brain and the ability to communicate. So well done. Sorry, that sounded patronising, but genuinely fantastic to meet you. How did you find yourself in this position? How with this kind of awareness?
Ooh, that's a once again a paradoxical question in a way. And what I'm about to say is nothing out of the ordinary in that sense. These similar types of narratives spoken by individuals there are thousands of us currently living like this, and there are a lot of people who have written it somehow in different types of historical notes. And the short answer is that I think I lost myself somewhere along the way. And then I realized that, oh wow, there was really nothing to be lost either. So on a personal level, there is a history of different types of spiritual experiences and different types of kind of more active, more passive states of what somebody could call spiritual seeking, which is just one form of, to me, I would say nowadays, it's just one form of life getting readjusted or climatized to that vibration and that beingness that is kind of coming and moving through this physical form, because that's what, in a way, in this three-dimensional reality, what seems to happen is that there is an actual vibrational change in the biochemistry and the whole body of being, and that's the body of information. So the information in the body just kind of gradually changes, and that's the same that has also happened to me in life. And here, like throughout the whole conversation, somebody who is closely listening to the conversation, you can definitely hear a certain vagueness in my speech, and that's the whole notion that there is no one size fits all way to go anywhere, because eventually the realization is that there really is no need to go anywhere. Even if you have the suffering or some sort of unfortunate circumstances, that's life being perfectly imperfect as it is as well. And as long as you're kind of trying to run away from that, you're running away from yourself and running away from the notion of what life, you could say, ultimately is. And the beautiful part of life is that, and you can replace life with God or love or universe. They don't really care. Life doesn't really care if you decide to run into this direction or just sit down, because it is perfect and ready and whole as it is. And that's the kind of truly compassionate view, that when you can kind of really marvel in that no matter what you do in life, you just can't fall out of it.
I get it. Okay, I get it. I don't think I'm living it yet, but I'm doing what I'm doing. And as you were talking, I'm kind of thinking of some of my subscribers and thinking of some of the comments that might be coming forward of like, yeah, it's very well for him to say, but. And do you know what? I leapt into a very strange thought, which was as we've been talking here about life is perfect as it is, and it is what it is. It simply is. The figure of Oppenheimer, right there. How can we put the circumstance that he involved himself in, as far as we're aware, it seems part of history, seems certainly part of what we accept as history, if history has any bearing. How do we relate that to what we've said about life is perfect, and yet I am the destroyer of worlds,
Yeah. That's a good question. I would actually bring it back once again, potentially a bit ruthlessly, to the notion that what moves in your awareness and your container when we start to kind of project or create a separation between my story and somebody else's story, and what is there in between, without starting to go too deep into the projection or the story or the narrative of how I might view them myself, or how the movie or the book or the culture might view it. It's more about what's in it for me. When I'm looking into the mirror, and the mirror is the mirror that is looking back to me is a historical figure like that. What is alive here? Because at the end of the day, that's especially if we are in a way playing the spiritual
Yeah.
lifestyle, none of the externals really matters. It's more about what moves here when life shows me this type of a mirror or mirage. Because eventually the realization is that however hard it might be for me to perceive another human being or other form of life doing this, that, and the other, the radical notion is that there is really no separation. There is no difference between me and them. And finding the notion that I don't really know, I haven't experienced that said life path. And I can't for certainty say that I wouldn't make the same life choices as that person might have done. And there comes the kind of the radical notion of I can't really say that I wouldn't act that way either. So eventually it's me making peace within myself with the notion that a fellow being of life has realistic or like perceivably acted this way.
I suppose, yeah. I mean, what was striking me there was that actually, I talk a lot about life being symbolic, and that we see the symbolism, and it simply is an array of symbols. And as you were talking there, that made complete sense. My view of Oppenheimer and what he was doing in that sense. I don't know why we're talking about Oppenheimer, but there you go. It's a classic example of, as you say, it's an extreme, but it made sense to me suddenly in terms of symbolically, because if there is only now, then, as you say, nothing else actually continues to maintain its presence now if we don't attribute it as part of our narrative. If we look at somebody in history and their actions, yes, the meaning is in our interaction with the thinking of what we perceive that happened there. It's not the reality, which is what you said. So to me, what you described there was a classic, a beautifully encapsulated illustration of how we treat life symbolically from this perspective, and how it also frees us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, beautiful.
Visa, it's been wonderful. I'm very, very grateful. Thank you so much for sparing your time and coming on. It's been fascinating, brain bending. I look forward to see what comments are left. I wish you very, very well. And do let us know when you're a father.
Yeah, I will. Thank you, Tim. It was lovely to catch up with you, and likewise, I could have stayed in this space for an eternity, which we did. So thank you very much.